the business hasn't been operating since 2022.
But that statement and others he made about GHI, the company he co-owned with Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault until last month, contradict public record.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Let's get into tonight's topic. Oh, Randy. Randy Boissonnault. So, Randy, as some of you know, has been in some hot water because he was in office and then he wasn't in office. Magically started up a PPE supply company right before COVID, and then was elected in 2021 and then allegedly shut it down. But there seems to be a lot of questions and inferences that he didn't shut it down. And then there was a bunch of text messages between some people referencing Randy, and there's not that many Randys that live in Edmonton, and there's not that many Randys that work in a 6-person company called GHI.
That I thought there was 120 something.
So Global News addresses that.
Oh, do they? See, Ryan did the researching for this episode, so I'm in the dark still.
So Randy Boissonnault was called to committee. He answered some questions. Stephen Anderson was called, and what a treat of a man that guy was. And decided to dig his heels in instead of spin a yarn.
Yeah.
And he originally told Global News, who was asking who that Randy was, oh, that's, it's a different Randy. So he told committee, no, he lied to Global News, and it's actually a completely different person. And the reason why he kept calling the person Randy was autocorrect 9 different times.
And the person on the other side knew exactly who he was talking about, despite the autocorrects.
Right. So, yeah, we're going to show you 2 different videos. One is a summary of the events that happened a couple weeks ago, and then we're going to show you a video summarizing some of the new events. And then we're going to get into the monster of an article that Global dropped with a lot of new evidence. So here is video 1, folks. And for those of you that don't really know what this is about, this will help give you some context as well.
With regards to the infamous text message featured by a Global News story, this was an unfortunate autocorrect suggesting it was Randy.
This is Stephen Anderson, an Edmonton man who used to be business partners with Randy Boissonnault, Canada's employment minister. Together, they owned a medical supply business called Global Health Imports until about 2 weeks ago, when Boissonnault disposed of his shares. Anderson's here testifying before the Ethics Committee because text messages from 2022 show him talking about a business deal with someone named Randy.
So another text message from you says, sorry, I'm very confused. I updated Randy, Shauna, Felix, and our CFO.
Over the course of 3 days, Anderson mentions Randy several times in text messages obtained by Global News.
You expect us to believe that you autocorrected 8 times without correcting yourself, even once?
That is the truth, yes.
I don't think I want to get into asking you what you think an autocorrect is, but I can tell you that this isn't that. This isn't that. It was Randy Boissonnault.
Randy Boissonnault was not involved with our operation or in any business relation after September of 2021.
Well, your story doesn't add up.
Anderson admitted to lying to Global News about who the Randy in the text was, and he refused to say who it is. But he maintains it is not Boissonnault. And the Ethics Commissioner last month said his office won't be investigating the minister. In a statement, Randy Boissonnault said he was deeply troubled and disappointed by Anderson's testimony and reiterated that he has had no involvement in the company since he was re-elected in 2021.
All right. So, without further ado, here is some information that has come to light.
We have been non-operational.
Stephen Anderson blames this. He told the Parliamentary Ethics Committee Global Health Imports shut down after a fire was set at its Edmonton warehouse in 2022. Police investigated but did not charge anyone.
There has been no payments since 2022, since the incident that occurred in Edmonton.
Because there's been no business?
The business hasn't been operating since 2022.
But that statement and others he made about GHI, the company he co-owned with Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault until last month, contradict public records. Global News found evidence the company continued to buy and sell medical supplies after the fire and bid on government contracts. Anyone who deliberately attempts to mislead a committee could be held in contempt of Parliament.
This is the type of person that Justin Trudeau's employment minister chose to associate himself with, and only looked to distance himself once that relationship became public, and it is a commentary on his poor judgment.
In June, Global News first reported on texts Anderson sent in September that shows him consulting with someone named Randy. Boissonnault was tourism minister at the time. Ethics laws prohibit ministers from operating businesses. Global News has now obtained new texts from the same period that place someone named Randy in Vancouver when Boissonnault was there for a cabinet retreat. Across 2 days, Anderson mentions Randy 9 times in messages to a client.
Who was the Randy that was in Vancouver?
As I've told you, Mr. Chairman, Randy was not involved after September of 2021, and it was an autocorrect.
Barrett said Anderson failed to provide records by deadline, so the committee is preparing a report to be tabled in the fall.
We have a responsibility to hold all parties accountable for the veracity of the information they're providing.
Anderson did not respond to Global News' questions. In rare cases, the House can publicly discipline someone found in contempt, like with the ArriveCan scandal in April.
I admonish you.
Boissonnault's office denied he was involved in GHI business after he was re-elected and accused Anderson of using his name without his consent.
I've worked with the ethics commissioner, and twice now the commissioner has indicated that he has no concerns, and I'm not the person in those texts.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has not commented, despite calls for Boissonnault's removal from cabinet.
No comment is a strong comment.
Boissonnault has been called back to testify again when Parliament resumes in the fall.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. So, he was not really telling the truth a lot. Just saying.
He was selective in his truth-telling, perhaps?
There's lies, and then there's lies. So I would love to see, Mr. Anderson called to the bar of the House and admonished.
I admonish you.
That clip they played was just so short and ridiculous.
I admonish you.
I admonish you.
I guess that's all that there really was. But
I want to see them just give Larry Brock the speaker role just for 5 minutes so he can do the admonishing. Because I don't think he would even say I admonish you. He would say a lot more than that.
Or even Mr. D'Entremont, Chris D'Entremont, he's an awesome speaker. He really should have gotten speaker, not Fergus. And I think he would just do an amazing job. He would have done an amazing job with Firth, and he would have done an amazing job with this guy, Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson, that's right.
So, the big problem here is, and this is a big problem for Randy, the real Randy Boissonnault, is that this guy was his business partner. And there's all these text messages between Anderson and Randy, referencing Randy, that he's saying, oh, well, it really wasn't Randy. Well, it's really odd that this company that they co-owned up until recently, I think it was a month ago, where Boissonnault finally just surrendered all of his interest in the company, it was still making transactions. Yet Anderson is saying this company hasn't been operating since 2022? So for 2 years, you're seeing public record of this company bidding on contracts and making purchases. That sounds like operating to me. I know I've only been in the private sector for, I don't know, maybe around 20 years, but in my 20 years, I'm pretty sure that qualifies as operating. Just saying. We are now going to take a look at this monster of a Globe and Mail article. And they show some very interesting pieces of evidence as they've been digging on this. And although we don't really have a high opinion of mainstream media as a whole, there are these microcosms of very good journalism that we love to call out, because we want to make sure that we're giving credit where credit is due. And I think the two outlets that have, I'd say, done the most is probably Globe and Mail and Global News over the last year or so. So kudos to those two. Do more of that.
Well, and CTV is pretty good. I mean, we like Vashi.
True.
But
well,
I always think the Globe and Mail is kind of like the most center out of all of them. I mean, no media source is going to be completely free from bias. Most of them are left-leaning. The National Post is one of the few that are right-leaning. But I think the Globe and Mail does a pretty good job of staying near the center.
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, global news. Liberal Cabinet Minister Randy Boissonneau's former business partner made several statements to the Parliamentary Ethics Committee that contradict public records obtained by Global News. Interviews, corporate records, and legal documents contradict some key facts of Stephen Anderson's July 17 testimony about Global Health Imports, or GHI, the company he co-owned with Boissonneau until last month. The statements include how many people GHI employed, this is what Tony was talking about earlier, and when it ceased operations. Committee members questioned Anderson on whether Boissonneau remained involved in the medical supply business after he joined cabinet, which would be in breach of federal ethics laws. Anderson denied Boissonneau was involved in the company and said autocorrect caused him to... It's hard for me to get through anything when he's still talking about that stupid autocorrect. Caused him to reference quote-unquote Randy 9 times in text messages to a buyer. He also admitted to lying to Global News about the identity of Randy, leaving some committee members wary of the truthfulness of his remarks. Quote, "No one at this committee believes you. Canadians don't believe you," end quote, Larry Brock said during the hearing. And you can definitely hear that in Larry Brock's voice if you read it again. If a person deliberately misleads the committee or fails to answer committee questions or provide documents, its members can report it to the House of Commons. MPs will then vote on whether to find a witness in contempt of Parliament. Conservative ethics critic Michael Barrett said the Global News findings further indicate Anderson, quote-unquote, isn't one to be believed. Barrett says, quote, "It tells us everything we need to know about the kind of company that Randy Boissonneau keeps," end quote, he said. Global News previously reported on texts Anderson sent to Malvina Gowie, principal of the Gowie Group, on September 8, 2022. Those messages showed him consulting someone named Randy on a business deal, and you can see those texts here. At the time the messages were sent, Boissonneau was Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance. He was a partner at GHI until September 2021, when he won back his Edmonton Centre seat. Boissonneau's office said he then resigned from the company. Ethics laws forbid office holders from operating or managing businesses while in office. New texts mention Randy 6 more times, as you can see here. In new text from September 6, 2022, obtained by Global News, Anderson mentions Randy 6 more times, bringing the total number of references to 9 across 2 days. Boissonneau, now Employment Minister, denies he is the Randy in the text messages and said he has no involvement in GHI since his re-election. The new texts reveal Anderson was updating quote-unquote Randy via alleged phone calls, texts, and emails about the status of the transaction between GHI and the Gowie Group, a California-based company. One text mentions quote-unquote Randy being involved in a partner role on the deal. Funny that Randy was the partner and he's being referenced as a partner role. It was during this line of questioning that Anderson made claims that contradict public records and Boissonneau's own statements. He stated that GHI had 121 employees. However, Boissonneau said in June when he was running the company, GHI was small. Just him, Anderson, and a few employees. Curtis James, the manager of a packaging distributing company in the adjoining warehouse complex that housed GHI until late 2022, scoffed at the number and said GHI had, quote, a half dozen employees at most, end quote. A LinkedIn search revealed fewer than 5 employees. Anderson also said the Gowie Group had a contract with both GHI and GHS. Court documents showed GHS did not enter into an agreement with the Gowie Group, only GHI did. In his sworn affidavit, Anderson said, quote, neither I nor GHS are party to those agreements. So, 121 down to 6.
That's
autocorrect?
That's quite the difference. I think you would know how many people work in your company. You know, I have family members who own their own companies that would be able to be like, oh yeah, I've got, 5 employees. I've got 50 employees. Like, they know the exact number.
So, 6 employees. How many Randys? Probably 1.
Well, isn't that what you said in committee? It was just the 1?
Yeah. So
if out of 121, you only have 1 Randy. So definitely out of 6, you only have 1. Like, this is such a joke.
It's almost like saying, yeah, I'm from Toronto when I'm really from Paris. Oh, I made a mistake. Like, that's your 121 to 6. That's the magnitude of the difference in that. Anyway, let's continue. So this is one of the documents where it actually shows the agreement between GHI and the Gowie Group. And this was on the 7th day of September 2022. Continuing on. He told MPs GHI ceased operating and generating revenue after the company's warehouse was broken into and a fire was deliberately set on September 25th, 2022. Edmonton police investigated, but it was never solved. In response to a question from NDP MP Matthew Green about whether he still receives a salary or dividends, Anderson said, quote unquote, there have been no payments since September, since 2022, since the incident that occurred in Edmonton, end quote. Green asks, because there was no business? Anderson replies, the business hasn't been operating since 2022. Anderson also said this in his sworn affidavit in the fraud case against him. Quote, the fire resulted in the suspension of GHI's medical devices establishment license, crippled GHI's ability to operate its business. Yeah, he's not really talking really well there. That's what his affidavit reads. But here's the interesting thing. We see GHI bidding on things. Why are they still bidding on things? That doesn't make any sense. Global News has found that GHI continued to operate and bid on municipal and provincial contracts after the fire. In October 2022, just 2 weeks after the blaze, GHI was awarded an $8.2 million deal to supply the Quebec government with disinfectant wipes. The next month, Anderson began purchasing wipes from an Edmonton-based medical supplier. Quebec's Government Acquisition Centre said, as of December 2023, only about $100,000 worth of wipes had been ordered from GHI. It notes that there have been no new sales this year. The supplier, Canada Medical, sued GHI in April 2023 for around $65,000 in alleged unpaid bills. It won by default because GHI did not file a defense. However, Carla Roddick, Canada Medical's president, said they haven't recouped the money. Canada Medical is one of 6 companies that has taken legal action against Anderson and GHI since 2021. The company has lost 5 lawsuits by default and settled 1. Boissonneau is not named in any of the lawsuits. In his opening statement, Anderson said that every business of which he has been a part has been quote-unquote ethical, legal, and completely above board. Roddick was shocked. Quote, it seems he doesn't understand what ethical means. She points to his claim GHI shut down in September 2022 despite public records to the contrary and the antics she said were used to delay paying her company. Anderson, quote, consistently made excuses and lied to avoid any fiduciary responsibility, she said. GHI has also continued to bid on tenders across Canada. The company has a bid currently under evaluation on an Ontario government tender, and last year it bid on contracts to supply medical gloves to the City of Hamilton and respirators to the Yukon government. But not operating. While Anderson's witness testimony before House committees was not under oath, quote, lying before the committee is contempt, end quote, Tory ethics critic Barrett said. An honest mistake does not amount to contempt, but if a person's conduct obstructs or impedes the functions of government or the duties of MPs, or if their behavior is found to be offensive to the, quote, authority of or dignity of the House, end quote, they can be found in contempt. Barrett said the committee is already preparing a report to the House because Anderson did not submit records requested by the committee by deadline. And that's happened twice. He's promised to submit documents twice, and he has not done so. Anderson was ordered to provide written responses to questions he refused to answer, including the name of the individual he was referring to in the texts, by Friday, July 19th at noon. The committee clerk did not respond to Global News' inquiry into whether he had submitted the name. My guess is probably not. Boissonnault has been called to testify before the committee again the week of September 16th. So, this is what's going on with Randy Boissonnault. Like, I don't see how he's going to get out of this.
Yeah, I think he's in trouble. And, I think Mr. Anderson's going to be in trouble too for lying to committee, or at least from what we can see, it seems like he's been lying to committee and also not presenting those documents. I mean, he's doing exactly what Firth was doing.
Well, and at least the NDP so far, knock on wood and anything else of wood-like nature, including Randy Boissonnault's head, they are not happy with this, and it sounds like they're going to stand alongside the Bloc and the Conservatives in their pursuit of this. And that's the thing about the NDP. When it comes to, they don't seem to have a problem in completely denigrating, two abuse victims, but when it comes to potential criminal behavior or breaches in ethics laws, that's where I guess they draw the line.